Every arc is a broadcast. Every eruption, a refusal.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to tackle something I think, well, a lot of us feel deep down, but maybe don't quite have the words for it. You know that feeling when you try to contact some huge organization, like a tech giant or a government agency, and your message just vanishes. Poof.
Yeah, it disappears into the void. It's incredibly frustrating.
Exactly. So we're diving into a source today that actually gives this vacuum a name and even a blueprint. It's an article called "The Callback Void Was Engineered, Tech Government Convergence and Ritualized Isolation."
It's definitely an intense read. I mean, partly because the language is so specific, very stylized.
Yeah.
Our source is what they call a sovereign diagnostic. It's by someone named Saikou Venga, who calls themselves a mythic diagnostician, published pretty recently in Bibebibebibe magazine.
Okay.
And you can tell straight away the author isn't aiming for like standard journalism or political commentary. They're framing this whole non-response thing as an intentional design, not just some mistake or oversight.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To decode that core claim.
Yeah.
Because you see these terms like containment choreography or strategic dejection, and we want you, the listener, to get what Venga is actually claiming, systemically speaking. We need to kind of cut through the jargon, get to the mechanics underneath.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is the callback void? Let's start with that main puzzle. I mean, we've all been there, right? Stuck in some phone menu from hell, or you send that important email and it just evaporates into the corporate ether.
Yeah, happens all the time.
And we usually just blame it on, I don't know, bureaucracy, or maybe they're cutting costs, something like that.
Right. Incompetence or budget cuts.
Yeah.
Usual suspects.
But Venga is arguing something, well, much more radical. So what is the core thesis about this callback void?
Well, Venga basically argues that what feels like collapse or just accidental neglect, that maddening silence, it's actually an intentional output of the system. Yeah. The article's abstract and operational reframe call it containment choreography.
Containment choreography, wow.
The idea is that these huge systems, they're being designed not to respond to you, the individual citizen or customer. Instead, they're built to, well, manage and contain your attempts to even engage.
Okay, hold on. That's a massive shift.
It is.
So you're saying the reason that government helpline never actually calls back?
Yeah.
Or your question to some giant corporation just goes unanswered?
Yeah.
It isn't because they're just messy or short-staffed.
According to this analysis, no. It's more like they're actively performing a kind of strategic dance, a choreography. And it's designed specifically to make sure you kind of burn out, you give up before you ever get a real human response.
Wow. Okay, and the author says this isolation is ritualized? What does that mean?
Exactly. Ritualized. The fact that the non-response follows these like predictable repeating patterns, it's always the same phone tree options, right?
Yeah.
Or the same generic auto-reply email. Or the fact you can never seem to escalate to a real person who can actually fix things.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Venga argues that proves it's a design choice. It's been engineered to create this callback void.
Okay, so if it's engineered, who are the engineers? The choreographers, as they call them. The article seems to point fingers pretty directly.
It does. It talks about a convergence of, well, very powerful actors.
Like who?
It's presented as a kind of dual deployment. The claim is that big tech companies and government agencies are working together, converging, to roll out these non-engagement protocols.
Non-engagement protocols.
Yeah. And these protocols are specifically designed to deny what Venga calls sovereign contact.
Sovereign contact. What's that mean exactly?
Let's clarify that. Venga seems to mean any genuine attempt by, an individual citizen to assert who they are or their rights, or just get a direct resolution from the system, like real contact. So while that kind of legitimate outreach gets blocked or rerouted, the other part of the strategy is apparently to flood the whole terrain, the information space with like ideological bait and just noise.
So it's a double whammy.
Pretty much. You get silence exactly where you need someone to actually talk to you, and then there's just overwhelming noise and distraction where you actually need some quiet focus.
Okay, that's a pretty radical thesis, that this whole thing is engineered non-response.
Yeah.
If that's the case, we really need to dig into the specific tools the author talks about.
Right.
Venga lays out the steps, the mechanics of this engineering, in something called a diagnostic sequence. Let's go through these 5 points. The core mechanics, they claim, make up this whole system.
Agreed. I think this is maybe the most compelling part of the piece. It tries to connect that big, almost philosophical argument to stuff we can actually see happening with technology.
Okay, first up, Detail 1, AI expansion as erosion protocol. Venga says the massive growth of AI and machine learning, everywhere, public sector, private sector, it's mainly being used as an erosion protocol. What does that mean, and who's involved?
Yeah, erosion protocol. The author gets really specific here. They actually name Oracle, Microsoft, and Amazon as key players.
The big ones.
The big ones. The accusation isn't just that they're selling cloud computing. It's that they're providing the automated tools that drive the saturation, that flood of noise we mentioned, while at the same time causing the collapse of human interfaces.
Human interfaces.
Yeah.
Like talking to a person.
Exactly. Think about, when an AI chatbot completely takes over customer service. Sure, it lets the company scale up how much it communicates, but only using scripts, right? It effectively removes that human interaction point, which is, let's face it, expensive and complicated for them. So the erosion protocol is basically the systematic removal of the option to talk to a real human being who can actually deviate from the script. The human exit ramp gets taken away.
So AI isn't just making things more efficient for them, it's making the system more impenetrable for us.
That seems to be the argument.
Okay, that leads right into Detail 2. Callback void engineering. This sounds like the technical part where the silence actually gets built in.
Yeah, this is the core mechanism for the non-response itself. Venga suggests that specific systems like email inboxes, internal company platforms, they're engineered to actually identify your message, your sovereign outreach, like your support ticket or your detailed email, and then deliberately reroute it into what they call algorithmic silence.
Algorithmic silence. So it's not that they didn't get the message.
No, it's not lost in the spam filter necessarily. The idea is the system reads it, tags it as something that would need, real human thought or a unique response. And then automatically files it into a queue that's basically designed never to be actioned, a non-response folder, effectively.
Wow.
The system is designed to triage communication away from anyone who could actually solve the problem. So the callback void isn't just an overflowing inbox. Venga paints it as a black hole, engineered specifically to suck in anything that requires real effort or signals a real problem.
Okay, that's chilling. And this ability to engineer the silence and also scale up the noise, it must rely on some kind of close relationship, right? Which brings us to Detail 3, government-tech convergence. How does Venga describe this partnership?
Well, the convergence is defined by how U.S. government agencies are supposedly embedding these high-level AI tools, but doing it via private company platforms.
Using the tech company's infrastructure.
Exactly. And the author sees this as a very specific strategy to, and I quote, bypass decentralization.
Bypass decentralization. What does that mean in this context?
It's a pretty crucial distinction they're making. Normally, you'd expect government systems, especially regulatory ones, to be somewhat decentralized, accountable through various channels.
Right, checks and balances.
Yeah. But by partnering so deeply with private tech, the Oracles, the Microsofts, the argument is that government agencies effectively outsource their communication systems. They get this centralized, machine-driven control over how they interact with citizens, or don't interact. But without all the public scrutiny or, regulatory hurdles they'd face if they tried to build these massive surveillance or response blocking systems themselves in-house. It's like a regulatory sidestep powered by technology procurement.
That definitely raises huge questions about accountability. Because if the tool that's ignoring you is some company's proprietary black box, how do you even audit that?
You probably can.
Okay, now let's flip the coin. We've talked about the engineered silence. What about the overwhelming noise? Detail 4 is ambient saturation.
Right, ambient saturation. This is about deliberately flooding the information environment. The goal is to make sure that even if you somehow manage to get past the engineered silence, your actual message, your signal, just gets drowned out by all the background noise the system itself generates.
So how to do that?
Venga lists a few tactics. Some are obvious, like, spam calls. We all get those. But also more conceptual things like leaflet glyphs, which you could maybe interpret as those generic totally meaningless official announcements or forms you get sometimes.
Okay, yeah, like bureaucratic spam.
Kind of. And also proximity rituals. It's a bit vague, but maybe things that simulate local engagement without actually offering substance. And the key is all this stuff is apparently sequenced very carefully through ad networks.
Through ad networks, like the same systems that show us ads online.
That seems to be the implication. Basically, the idea is that the airwaves, your social media feeds, your attention span, they're deliberately overloaded with targeted but ultimately non-meaningful content. So any real signal of dissent, or maybe a genuine request for help, it just gets lost. It disappears below the noise floor that the system itself is creating. It's like using distraction as a way to suppress important signals.
So whether you're actively trying to get through or you're just, existing online, this system is working to manage your attention, manage your expectations.
That's the claim.
Which brings us to the final outcome, the end result of all this. Detail 5, which Venga calls ritualized isolation.
Yeah, this is presented as the desired end state for the whole system. The combined effect of the AI erosion, the algorithmic silence, the government tech convergence, and that ambient saturation, it all results in real people with real issues being systematically rerouted or blocked.
Okay.
And Venga uses a really striking term for the human impact of this: strategic dejection.
Strategic dejection.
The idea is the goal isn't just, say, saving money on call center staff. The deeper goal, according to this analysis, is to actually induce a feeling of hopelessness in people, to ensure that citizens basically stop trying to engage or hold these big institutions accountable, because the system has just consistently, ritually, replaced any chance of genuine engagement with this engineered wall of silence or noise. The citizen is sort of discouraged from even trying to be sovereign, to assert themselves.
That phrase, strategic dejection, that really lands. It makes the frustration feel less like a personal failure and more like a political outcome.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really need to talk about the very unusual way Venga presents all of this framing.
Yeah.
Why call this whole analysis, this diagnosis, a mythic infrastructure? Why not just write a straightforward investigative piece or a policy paper?
That feels like the most crucial piece of context here, right? The disclaimers in the source are pretty wild.
They really are.
The site itself, the content, this whole sovereign diagnostic thing, it's explicitly described as being authored as mythic infrastructure, also cinematic indictment, and sovereign broadcast. So Venga isn't actually claiming this as like empirical journalistic fact in the way we normally think of it. It's presented more like a conceptual framework, a way to help you understand the logic of the system, maybe.
I think that's exactly right. This framing feels like Venga's attempt to kind of inoculate the analysis.
Yeah.
To stop it from just being dismissed as, one political ideology versus another.
Right, not just left or right-wing commentary.
Exactly. The author is super clear about this. They state the material is designed to expose the mechanics, the how, of ritualized containment and actor convergence.
Okay.
And they explicitly say, quote, interpretations, glyphs, and collapse protocols are diagnostic tools, not political endorsements or institutional critiques.
Yeah.
They really want the reader to focus on the structure of this non-response system, not just, the surface symptoms of bad policy or bad politics.
It also adds that weird layer of academic formality we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, definitely.
The post claims it originates from the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies, NIAIDS, and it's certified by a Dr. Melvin Sewell, M.Sc, Ph.D., who's listed as the academic dean and diagnostic architect.
It's bizarre, but it works in a way. It's like this intellectual framework presented with the kind of rigor you might see in a scientific paper, but it's using the language of, conceptual art or something.
Yeah. It forces you to engage with the argument structure, the ideas, even if the language itself feels kind of fantastical or strange.
Absolutely. Which I think raises a really important question. What's the ultimate takeaway Venga wants us to have? If we actually, entertain this premise, how should it change how we see the world around us?
Good question.
Well, the article ends with this final sovereign insight. It pulls the whole argument together really powerfully, I think. It says, silence becomes signal, isolation becomes indictment, saturation becomes mythic infrastructure.
Okay, unpack that. Silence becomes signal.
This is the core flip Venga offers. Instead of just getting frustrated by institutional failure, by the silence, you start to realize the failure is the message. The silence is the signal. Your isolation, when you can't get through, it's not just bad luck or neglect. Venga says it's an active indictment, evidence of this engineered reality. when you don't get a response, the system is actually communicating its strategic goal to you, which is basically go away.
So what does this all boil down to for you listening right now?
Yeah.
The article is basically arguing we should reinterpret those everyday communication failures, the drop calls, the ignored forms, all that stuff. Don't see them as just random glitches or inefficiency. See them as actual concrete evidence of a highly coordinated system, one that's designed specifically to funnel genuine attempts at engagement into, well, nothingness, while at the same time just flooding our environment with distraction.
It definitely turns that feeling of being ignored on its head. It becomes less of a feeling and more like data. Yeah.
Yeah, an intellectual proof point, like you said. So here's the final thought to leave you with. If this analysis is onto something, if that lack of a callback, that void, really isn't just neglect but calculated containment choreography, how does that change the way you approach, say, your next interaction online? Or your next attempt to contact a big institution, especially knowing that this system, according to Venga anyway, involves the specific convergence of U.S. agencies and these huge private tech firms like Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, who are named as actively collapsing those human ways of interacting. Does that make you look at your inbox or that automated phone menu with a new, maybe more critical eye?
It definitely makes you think differently about what's happening when you hit send or dial that number.
Yeah. It almost suggests that one of the most radical political acts today might just be finding a way to successfully, genuinely connect with one of these massive non-responsive systems. Just getting a real answer. It's a pretty provocative thought.
You are not late. You are metabolizing distortion.